G'day and welcome back to Reality Check. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart, and as you know, we ventured to the town of Sedona, a UFO hotspot, if there ever was one, slap bang in the middle of the Arizona desert. And in that town, there have been claims for years of hidden, deep underground military bases, armed military personnel showing up in supposedly remote areas near the town, chasing away hikers, telling them they can no longer be in what is public land. Witnesses also report seeing glowing UFO UAP orbs hovering over mountains very near to the town. And they're also reporting a lot of other paranormal activity, including claims of interdimensional portals and other weird alleged phenomena. And for decades, there's one Sedona local who's been at the middle of all of this, Tom Dongo. He's doggedly investigated these accounts, reporting on what he's discovered in magazines and in numerous TV appearances, including the recent Beyond Skinwalker Ranch series. His initial work focused on the mysterious goings-on at the Bradshaw Ranch, a recognised local hotspot for high strangeness phenomena. But his investigations have led him to a dramatic conclusion about the entire Sedona, Arizona region. It's ground zero for the paranormal. Here is Tom Dongo. Tom, how many years have you been researching, paranormal phenomena around Sedona?
Well, I'm almost 80 years old. In my next birthday, I'll be 80. So I've been in Sedona about 40 years, but in all, about 50. I started out researching Bigfoot when I was 16 years old, so that's where I started.
How is it that you came to Sedona and got interested in this subject? What drew you into it?
Well, I've been sort of interested when I was younger. I'd have flying saucers, UFO sightings and whatnot. So anyway, but when I got to Sedona, I ran into so many people that had an amazing paranormal or UFO experience or some other experiences.
What were people seeing?
Well, UFOs, strange things, cryptids, Bigfoot, and strange lights. Like we were talking earlier about on Thunder Mountain, which is over here, there'd be strange blue lights floating around the mountain during the day and at night. So just very different things. So at any rate, I got interested because I have a thirsty curiosity. So I started digging into this stuff, and because I've been a writer my whole life, magazine articles and whatnot. So I started talking to people. And I thought, well, heck, I'm going to write a book. I'd already written one book. I'd done basically just a story, and the woman turned it into a book, and it's still selling 36 years later, still selling.
That's Mysteries of Sedona.
Mysteries of Sedona, yeah. It's kind of a funny little book, but people love it.
When did you first start hearing about or even seeing what you think were craft?
Well, I'm kind of famous because of the Bradshaw Ranch. That's my fame, is the Bradshaw Ranch. So on the Bradshaw Ranch, the owner, Bob and Linda Bradshaw, asked me to come out. I got a letter from them because I didn't know them. Said, will you please come out here, because I was known as a researcher, and look at some of this stuff. And we saw strange things flying around.
Like what?
Well, this, for example.
What is that?
Strange lights. Well, this is. I took this photograph myself, and this is just off the Bradshaw Ranch. But these things, these orbs of light would come out of the ground and fly off. This is a 35 millimeter shot. It's a time exposure. It's about probably a 6-second time exposure. Most of my stuff was 35 millimeter. And then towards the end I spent almost 5 years on the Bradshaw Ranch. So. Towards the end, digital came out, and we had the same. What we would do in my book, Merging Dimensions, it sells all over the world, and it's got the photographs in it that I took with a 35 millimeter and later digital. But we would walk around at night and just take flash pictures with 35 millimeter and then develop the negatives during the day.
And so just tell me about the Bradshaws. What was it that they were seeing on the ranch that made them come to you?
Well, they're in here, but orbs. And Linda Bradshaw and I got to be the world experts on orbs, and Linda Crystal in New York, Pine Bush, New York. And they're living beings, whatever they are. These orbs, they're round, they come in different sizes.
So you think they're sentient, some form of life?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
They're not craft?
No, these are living. We played flash games with them with spotlights.
So we've just come from Phoenix, of course, where there was the Phoenix light incident in 1997. Do you think the orbs or the balls of light that were seen then are what you were seeing?
No, different. That started from here, the Phoenix lights. It started from right up here in Paulden, a town above us. And the first time they saw it was there, so it started basically right here. But no, that was a craft.
There's a lot of speculation
Yeah.
that there's a huge increase right now in anomalous activity all over Arizona.
Yes.
It's a hotspot. Pilots.
Yes. Well,
pilots
this is the world hotspot right here.
So we're ground zero, Sedona.
Yeah, this is ground zero. This has a variety of paranormal activity that happens nowhere else in the world.
Like what?
Well, different kinds of stuff, lights, noises, things, like for instance, Black Mountain, the amber lights flashing beams, and they're spectacular. I've seen them.
Is it possible that what you're seeing is something military? I mean, a lot of people are suggesting that there are military bases, hidden bases, somewhere in the hills around here. People have described being stopped by military-dressed soldiers, men with weapons. Have you heard about that? Have you seen that?
Oh, yes. I spent years researching that. There have been I call them gunpoint incidents, about 35 back in the 90s here. Like, for instance, a hiker would be hiking on a well-worn National Forest trail, and he would run into a gang of guys that they're all dressed in American military uniforms, but with no insignia, and they were all carrying guns. This happened about 35 times. I interviewed some of the people first person, but some of them I had to take second, third person stories.
And where was this?
Well, the one that I know of was in Secret Canyon.
And what's Secret Canyon?
Well,
Where's that?
the funny thing about Secret Canyon is Bob Bradshaw was here in 1949. He built his ranch in 1949, and he didn't know. He asked around in 1949, and nobody knew why Secret Canyon was called Secret Canyon. But very, very strange. I've written about it in my books. That very, very strange things happened in Secret Canyon.
Just going back for a moment to these claims of people being stopped by military-clad men with guns, is the confrontations that are happening, happening on public land?
It was all on public land, national forest, U.S. national forest land.
Now, you'll forgive me if I'm a bit credulous, skeptical about this.
Sure.
You'll forgive me if I'm a bit skeptical, because I would have thought if those people had that happen to them, they'd go to the police and complain that they were stopped by thugs with guns.
Some did. They don't. They didn't. They don't. They just got. They would joke. They laughed at them. That basically, but they never.
They didn't believe them.
No, they didn't believe them. So, but the one incident I know of that I was able to track the guy down and talk to him. He was on the trail going into Secret Canyon, and there were 6 men standing there, and he came up to them and they said, "You can't go any further. The land behind you is a restricted military access zone for a few days. Then we'll be done and we'll be out of here." And he said, his name was Light, and he said, "Well, I'm going that way. I want to go into Secret Canyon. This is all public land, and that's a public trail." And the guy stuck an M16 in his face. He said, "You take one more step and I'll pull the trigger." That's how serious this stuff got.
So I hope this guy went to the police and complained. I mean,
no.
That's illegal behavior.
Oh no, they almost never do, because the police are going to laugh at them. They say, "Oh yeah, sure, buddy,
Do you think there's some kind of secret, perhaps underground base?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I have no idea. I'm the world expert on this stuff, and I have no idea what it is. But I would guess that there are 4 or 5 bases, and I told you about that one. You can investigate if you want to. I don't want to have anything to do with it.
You're actually scared of even talking about it, aren't you?
Yes.
You know the address of a base.
Yes, I know exactly.
You've told me where it is.
Yeah.
You told me about a guy who you say disappeared.
Well, he was a professional in what he did, and he wasn't the kind of person to fool around. He would prove what, if he talked about something, he'd prove it, and he did. He took me there 3 times, and he showed me the photographs that he had, and then this is a quote, and I was sitting with him having a coffee with he was there with his wife. He was told by on this base, he said, you come up here again, we will kill you.
So one of the stories that I've been told that you know about is the claim that a couple of policemen were walking in the hills and they came across something. What can you tell me about that?
Okay, there were 2 people here, a woman and a ex-CIA agent named Jim Sweet. He died about 10 years ago of cancer, but he's retired CIA. So Claudia and Jim would, their turf was south of here. Mine was up here. Well, there were about 6 of us that were researchers, but at any rate, Jim talked to 2 active duty police. They were just hiking. They were, recreation, and there were another 2, and they were both active duty police in Clarkdale, Arizona. So at any rate, the police came to an open. I know this story well because I remember the whole thing when Claudia told me. There was open manhole cover, and they looked down and they saw a ladder going down not far, maybe 20 feet. Because I've been asked this question a lot about how deep went it. But at any rate, the police, well, let's go down there. So they went down, and these are active duty police that told this story. Credibility is sky high. They went down, and they said there were tunnels going everywhere. Everywhere you looked, there were tunnels. Not big tunnels, but tunnels.
And this is near Clarkdale?
Yes.
Near the cement works?
Yes. Yeah.
And what happened?
Well, so they said, and this is a quote from the police, suddenly the tunnels were swarming with military police. They were in U.S. military uniforms, but no insignia. I mean, these are police. I mean, they would know. They all had machine guns. And they said, well, listen, you guys, forget what you saw. Go back to the ladder, climb out of here, and never tell anyone what you talked about. And so of course they told Claudia Claudia, but they said that the tunnels went everywhere. It's an unlikely spot for tunnels. It really is. I've been there.
So just let me clarify for a moment. Is there any known military defense facility anywhere near Sedona?
Phoenix. That's the closest.
That's the closest.
Yeah.
There's no declared facility with defence signs saying this is a military installation, please keep out.
No.
There's no signs saying no trespassing government land or anything like that.
No, not that I know of.
And yet you're saying that people are telling you they've been in tunnel systems where US military with guns are patrolling. How big are these tunnel systems?
Well, the big ones are about 50 feet, and they're probably, the one that went under the Bradshaw Ranch, it went right under the Bradshaw Ranch. Incidentally, I'll tell you a quick story. I was, the U.S. military, this was about 1993, closed this whole area off, and a U.S. congressman called somebody in Sedona, and he came to me. And he said, the congressman, the U.S. congressman said, what in the hell is going on in Sedona? The military is getting ready to shut Sedona off. What's going on? And he didn't know, and I didn't know either, except that the military was everywhere.
The thing I find intriguing is that there are people here in this whole area of Arizona, but particularly here in Sedona, who are seeing very weird things. And they've been seeing them for many, many years.
Well, There are people that there can be 100 people standing together, and one or two people see a UFO, and the rest don't.
Have you ever been able to develop any military contacts who can tell you?
Oh yes.
What these things are?
Oh, well, no, but I've had they were all colonels or lieutenant colonels, my friends, and I have for example, I was with 6 people one night, 6 witnesses. We had 3 very expensive cameras, and none of them worked. None of them would focus. But there was a craft on the ground being repaired, and there were lights flying around it. And
who was repairing it?
Well, the lights were. We all saw it. We had binoculars. We watched it. It was only about a quarter of a mile away, and the light. It looked like at 5 o'clock. The disc. It looked like it'd been. We thought it'd been hit by a missile. So anyway, these lights were repairing it. So a friend of mine went down there, and it got within his high beams got on it. He had a 4-wheel drive. So it started to pulse, and these UFOs, when they start to pulse, they're getting ready to shoot. I've had it happen many times. Long story, but a friend of mine is an Air Force colonel, and I said, Ron, what do you think? And he said, it wasn't one of ours. If it was, there would be attack helicopters all around it and guys on the ground with machine guns.
So you're telling me that you're in touch with people in the military,
yes,
who actually know that
they're all retired now.
Because this is an allegation that a former intelligence officer, David Grush, only made in 2023.
Yeah, right.
That the US is in possession of non-human technology.
Yeah.
Now you realise the Pentagon has formally denied that they've got any possession of any such technology. You think that's a lie? Yes.
Until they're caught red-handed with evidence, they're going to continue to deny it.
Why would they deny it?
Well, the explanation was given to me that if people knew that an extraterrestrial race was real, they were really here, and they are. I've met 3. Then our government, the U.S. government, would be powerless against these. There'd be another power, a higher power than the government, and the government doesn't want to lose their influence, their control.
Now it's my job at this point to be doubtful.
You
realise?
Oh, sure.
I mean, there's no evidence of that, is there?
No. Well, if there is, it's been disappeared. If there is evidence, one of my better friends was an Army colonel, and he investigated 6 crashes, like Roswell, and he knew of 5 others that he investigated. He showed me the evidence, the photographs, the witnesses. This is a guy that got witness. Colonel Wendell Stevens. He's famous. He was one of my best friends, and so
he was one of the early Blue Book people, wasn't he? Yeah.
Well, yeah. And then Bob Dean, Sergeant Major Bob Dean. He was one of my best friends, and those 2 guys between them, they had some phenomenal, real experiences.
Colonel Wendell Stevens, was he telling you that the United States was in possession of non-human craft?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So he told you that directly?
Yes. Because he was directly involved in several. He said there was a string. The first one was Roswell, and there were a string of them that went up to Kingman, Arizona. There were about 5 crashes, and he was directly involved in the last one, and it was actually near Kingman.
Secrets have a way of wriggling out into the open, Tom.
Right, they do.
I'm trained to be skeptical about these kind of claims, because the military very rarely keeps a secret. It invariably leaks, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but nobody believes it. Bill Cooper. Bill Cooper was famous, and he was President Clinton called him America's enemy #1 because he was telling the truth. Bill Cooper. So I mean, he couldn't prove it, but everybody, he was a hero to many people, and then he cost him his life.
But really, at the heart of all of this, Tom, apart from what I guess a lot of people would call hearsay, you've been told things by people who say they know things, there's no hard evidence, is there?
Well, I'm going to say this here. I've said this to audiences so many times. If the world could see what I've seen with my eyes, and I've had cameras, video cameras in my hand, I was so shocked that I forgot that I had a camera in my hand afterwards.
And what were you looking at?
Unusual things that my brain couldn't understand, couldn't explain.
Craft?
Various things. There's, I'm trying to think of an example.
What are the craziest things you've seen? Tell me some.
Well, the only one I can remember offhand is I was visiting a friend in Washington State near Mount Adams, and there was a strange light on the mountain. It was always there, flying around, and it came down. It came off the mountain, and it was right in front of me. And I had a Sony camera in my hand, and this thing was so strange. I'm thinking, what in the hell is that thing? And by the time I said, well, it must be a street light, because the wind was blowing hard, so I figured it must be a street light, and the winds were, it was moving, but it was really actually moving. So I asked the man that lived there, I said, what's the deal with that? Is there a street light down there at night and whatever? He said, no, there's nothing there. He said, that thing came off the mountain probably because you were there, and I had a Sony camera right in my hand. I could have filmed the whole thing. I didn't.
Have you yourself ever seen any hard evidence of craft coming out of the mountain?
No, not myself, but I've interviewed a number of people.
Who've seen it?
Yeah.
Have you seen, I think Jeremiah Horstman's
Right.
taken a photograph of an Apache helicopter gunship chasing a craft.
Yeah.
Have you seen things like that?
No, but I've seen two jet fighters, American jet fighters. This was about in the 90s, escorting a disc.
A disc?
A disc. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they were flying south.
Whereabouts?
Right here, about a mile from where we are.
Why would it? Let's assume that
I don't know. See, that's it. Why? Why?
Do you think it was an American craft?
Yeah, since Wendell Stevens told me since 1951, the U.S. government has been flying their own, and they're called Flux craft, F-L-U-X. And I've seen pictures of the Flux craft, and a guy that's got about 6 PhDs said, oh, you're nuts, that's not possible. I've seen pictures of them, and they look like they've been to Mars and back, because they're all got pebble, like they've been hit with things. They're all kind of beat up on the outside.
So do you think they're retrieved non-human craft, or do you think they're United States craft?
No, these are all, the ones that Wendell Stevens was involved in, they were all non-human.
Non-human.
Non-human. Well, no, I don't say that.
You're taking me way down the rabbit hole here, Tom.
Yeah, I do that. I do that all the time.
This is hard for all of us, okay?
I do that all the time.
But I mean, I guess we've come here because something's happening.
Yeah,
exactly. Military pilots are seeing things.
Yes.
Civilian pilots are seeing things. Reliable witnesses.
Yes.
Craft.
Yeah.
Black triangles, discs, orbs, lights. What the hell are they?
Well, that's what keeps me going in this. I've had audiences of up to 9 million people on the radio. I've been on Coast to Coast 3 times, and I say, I want to know what the hell is going on. That's what keeps me in this business. I just want to know what the hell is going on.
What's your theory?
Well, it's interdimensional. I think it's coming from other dimensions, most of it.
There are portals, aren't there? There are people telling stories of portals that
Yeah.
actually go back in the Native American legend.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Well, I'm aware of a lot of it. And when Linda Bradshaw, on the Bradshaw Ranch, there was a portal. I mean, I've been on television now countless times talking about this, and there was a portal there. And I think it was, the ranch house is here, and the portal was about 20 feet by 30 feet.
You saw this?
No, she could. Linda could see it, but I could feel it, but I couldn't see it. But there were things coming out of that. Some nights, I spent 4.5 years in the Bradshaw Ranch, and there were some nights you could feel, I said, Linda, it feels like we're in Times Square in New York right now. We've got things moving all around us. And sometimes you could smell them. Sometimes they smell like roses, and one time they smelled like burning tar.
Let's assume, hypothetically, there is some kind of underground facility somewhere around here. Where should we look?
Around Black Mountain in Clarkdale, in that area. It's obvious entrances there. And I've had so many people. I had a woman that said, we had a tunnel drilled under a house. There was a bunch of houses there. I showed Melinda Leslie about it the other day, and all the houses were shaking. We could feel it coming. We could feel it underneath the houses. And this is in the Verde Canyon, a little bit up from Clarkdale. It was shaking the houses, and we could hear it going away.
So do you think if we went and knocked on doors in Verde Canyon?
No, they won't. I've tried that. I can tell you stories, but we don't have that time. But
What, people won't talk?
no, they're it's like Indians. Indians won't talk to you until they trust you, right? So that's the sort of thing.
But do you think people are being threatened to keep quiet?
Yeah, in extreme cases, we'll kill you and your whole family. That one of those things. No,
Wow.
that's the standard.
But sorry, just to be clear, this rattling, this vibration that people were describing just north of Clarkdale at Verde, you're saying that there was drilling underneath their homes?
Yes, absolutely.
And they were telling you this was happening?
Yes, yeah.
When was this?
In the 90s, 90s, mid-90s.
So, I mean, we are, no disrespect to Sedona, we're in the middle of nowhere here. This is the Arizona desert.
Yeah.
You're saying that somebody, presumably the US military, is drilling huge tunnels?
Well, the thing, in all the years of research I've done, there have been extraterrestrials, I mean non-human, humanoid extraterrestrials seen in the vicinity of U.S. military. So is this just U.S. military, or is it just alien, or are they together?
Oh, you think that's a possibility?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's take the other side of this.
Yeah.
If you were the US government
Yeah.
and you were trying to hide a facility, what a cool way of hiding it.
Plain sight. You want us to hide something? Hide it in plain sight, like that thing I showed you.
And hide it in a village that's notorious for
Yeah.
people who believe in paranormal phenomena.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you can just dismiss everything and say they're all a bunch of crazies.
Yeah. All it takes is somebody to come up with something that's not true, accuse them of something, it's all over. Because they've been accused, so they got to prove it's not real, and their credibility is shot.
But Tom Dongo, you're sticking to your guns.
Yeah.
You believe it's
Totally,
real.
yeah.
You believe it's real.
Oh yes, absolutely. Like I say, if you would hear some of the things, I've talked about 90 million people on worldwide radio. Some of the stuff I talk about, I wouldn't have dared to talk about 10 years ago. Wouldn't have dared to. So
Do you ever worry for your own safety?
Yeah, to a point. I'm careful to not go too far.
Before we go, just one last thing.
Yeah.
You told me the story about discovering air vents on what looked like phone boosters.
Yes.
Just explain that story to me.
Okay, Bell Telephone used to have, they were about 15 feet by 15 feet. They'd be sitting out in the middle of nowhere. They were dial telephone relays, Bell Telephone in this country. And so Eric said, look at this. And I said, well, it's a Bell Telephone little blockhouse, a relay station.
So Eric was your friend who was investigating what he thought was a secret underground base.
Yes.
And so what did he think that those supposed phone relay stations were?
So I'm looking at this thing, and I say, well, but he said, well, look on the side of it. There was an air vent this big, this little 15-foot telephone station. There was an air vent this big going into the ground, and I looked and I said, well, yeah, now I see what you're talking about. And then he showed me another photograph of, look at this, what do you see? And I see a ranch house with telephone poles. Well, look on top of the telephone poles. There was no wires, but they were discs on the top of each telephone pole.
You think they were air vents?
Well, not on the telephone poles.
What were they?
There was some kind of communication thing.
Oh, right.
What-
So he's the guy who you believe was investigating. He told you he
Yeah.
was investigating deep
But
underground.
why?
military
But
bunkers.
why would something on a ranch? Why would discs on top of telephone? Well, there were about 5. They all had. Why was a ranch using telephone poles with satellite discs, little ones on top? So I mean, that right there is pretty fishy. I mean, it doesn't add up.
At the very least, Tom, it needs to be investigated.
Yes.
Well, that's what we've come here to do.
That's what I do. I mean, that's my theme. What has been for the last 50 years. I want to find out what's going on.
Tom, thanks so much.
Yes, you bet.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And please don't forget to click that red subscribe button to ensure you get more of News Nation's unbiased and fact-driven news coverage.